In this video, I will be discussing the process of fermentation and the experiment that I performed when making yogurt at home. There are two types of fermentation to start off. There's alcohol fermentation and there's also lactic acid fermentation. And for my experiment, I made yogurt, which would fall under an example of lactic acid fermentation. Through lactic acid fermentation, microbial bacteria is an essential organism in the process. Some of the different types of bacteria that may be involved would be Lactobacillus acidophilus, Streptococcus thermophilus, and Lactococcus lactis. I believe I said that correctly. They're a little hard to say. But when making my yogurt, I started off with a cup of milk. The milk is otherwise known as lactose sugar in fermentation, and it serves as a substrate which allows the enzymes to activate. The milk or lactose sugar is then ionized, forming lactate. The milk I use is already pasteurized, which helps get rid of any harmful bacteria and makes way for good bacteria. But you can also start off with raw milk. You would just have to make sure to go through the full pasteurization process and boil down and heat it to a high enough temperature to get rid of any harmful bacteria. I boiled my milk down, reducing the amount of fat molecules in the milk and also allowing the good bacteria to come alive and culture. Heating the milk again is also like pasteurizing the milk again, to just ensure that there are no bacteria still in there and just in case anything may have fallen into the milk. Heating the milk also helps the proteins bind to other proteins called caseins. My next step is to pour the milk into a container and let it cool for a few minutes to about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, where the lactic acid is then being formed. I then added a starter, which in my case was a tablespoon of yogurt. And again, like other experiments I kind of like researched and stuff, they used like 2 cups of milk and 2 tablespoons of yogurt, but I thought maybe it'd be okay. I just use a cup of milk and a tablespoon of yogurt. But I'll explain my results here at the end. And so for adding the tablespoon of yogurt as a starter, it aided in the fermentation process. And then once the milk is cooled slightly, I put an airtight cover on the container and wrapped it tightly in a towel so it would insulate it and help and so that no oxygen would enter the container. I then moved it into a spot where it would be kept insulated and undisturbed. The reason why I kept it with an airtight container, had it wrapped and insulated so it wasn't disturbed, and so that the bacteria can grow a lot faster without any added oxygen. Keeping it at a constant temperature about 40 degrees allows for the lactic acid bacteria to ferment for about 9 hours. I then moved it to the refrigerator to be cooled. After cooling the yogurt, it should have about a pH of 4.4 and leaving a result of a thicker homemade yogurt. And now I'll kind of talk to you guys about my results. My results looked a little bit more like this, very runny. You can kind of see the curds in there. Almost like kind of mucusy, and definitely curdled, didn't really form too well. And with following all of these steps correctly, I should have resulted in regular, nice, thick, and creamy yogurt. However, mine seemed to be a lot thinner. Definitely still you saw like some of the curds forming. I believe that my issue was that my yogurt maybe was not heated to the correct temperature. I didn't have a thermometer, but I would definitely think I should probably get one after doing that experiment. I should have made sure the heat for the milk was boiled to a temperature of about 90 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. I also maybe think I undermeasured and I used too little of the starter or yogurt that I used. And it is also possible that my yogurt was maybe not fresh enough. It was maybe it was getting a little too close to the expiration date, so it wasn't as effective. And lastly, I did move my container around a bit when I was wrapping it in a towel, which disturbed the process. All of these issues resulted in my yogurt being runny, lumpy, separated. It looks kind of like a mess. But when I do this experiment again, I will make sure that I'm using a thermometer to test the temperature correctly of the milk when I'm heating it, and also check it again when it's cooled. So it can get to that temperature of 90 to 110, then cool it down to that 40 degrees Fahrenheit temperature. Then adding that tablespoon um, of yogurt and mixing it well without disturbing it too much, without shaking it too much. And just making sure that I use correct portioning instead of just doing, maybe there wasn't enough starter in there, so just maybe staying with it, 2 cups of milk to 2 tablespoons. Maybe that would work out a little bit more. And just being more careful when storing my yogurt and milk mixture. All right, guys, thanks for listening.